Let's get started, everybody. My name is John Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a nice I looked through the list of folks that registered for today. Where there's about 80 people that signed up for the webinar, either joining us live today or requesting the recording of this after the fact. So thanks to all of you who are joining us live, and to those of you who are watching this after the fact. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about Wholesum. As I dive in to sort of introduce myself and Wholesum, if you're up for it, I would love to just kind of get a sense of who's joining us live. If you're willing to chat quickly using the chat tool in Zoom to say, where are you calling in from, what organization are you with, and what's your experience with Wholesum, just to kind of get a sense of who we've got in the room. From the registration list, I was able to see that we've got a pretty diverse mix joining us, which is great. We've got some folks from the rafting outfitting world, some outdoor education folks, some people from summer camps and bed and breakfasts. So it's fun to see that diversity. It's also fun to see that there's a pretty good mix of folks on here between current users that are want to learn more about the tool, or folks with organizations that are already using it that might be new to Wholesum, as well as some folks that are just considering jumping on, or people we've met at conferences over the past few months. So I appreciate all of you jumping on. Without further ado, I want to do a quick introduction of myself and Grace. So my name is John Cameron, and joining me is Grace Brogan, co-founder of Wholesum. And Grace and I started Wholesum back in 2016, so we've been around for around 7 years. We both come from backgrounds sort of dealing with food systems and outdoor education. And I'll say personally, I started Wholesum along with Grace years ago, in part because I was working in an environment where we were trying to feed groups regularly, and we're just bumping up against so many barriers, dealing with lots of food waste, dealing with lots of wasted time. I spent a lot of time working on, and this might be familiar to some of y'all, but working on trying to build out these kind of gnarly spreadsheets that would help us manage our food and reduce our waste and save time. And those things, worked to some degree for us, but we kept running into obstacles that would break, or we'd need to train someone, or it wasn't adaptable from organization to organization. And so in 2016, Grace and I started Wholesum in an effort to try to really get a sense of, come up with a tool that would really solve this problem for any industry that's really trying to feed groups in general. It's taken with a lot of folks in the outdoor world. So we do have some, ranches and bed and breakfasts and personal chefs using Wholesum, but a lot of the user base that we have are coming from that outdoor education, outfitting world, summer camps, that sort of thing. So it's good to see a good mix of folks on here today. Grace, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add in terms of Wholesum background or an introduction to yourself.
I think that's a great start. Some folks have started introducing themselves in the chat as well, so I just encourage people to keep doing that. And then feel free to use that chat. John will kind of be leading the show, but if you have questions that come up, there will be a few kind of points where John will kind of pause and take questions. But if, as we're going, you have a thought that doesn't seem to get covered in those pauses, or it seems relevant to the timing in our conversation, feel free to put that in the chat as well, and I'll try to keep an eye there.
Thanks, Grace. And as a reminder, this will be recorded, and so we'll send out a copy of the recording afterwards if you need to jump, or if somebody on your team would like to watch it, or if you want to get a refresher on what we talked about today. That recording should go out likely today or tomorrow, so you'll have access to it. Great to see another Montana company joining us today. Grace and I are based in Missoula, Montana, but have been working with folks across the country with Wholesum and across the world to some degree. So it's great to see such a diverse crew jumping on. So without further ado, let me share with you the game plan for today and what we're going to talk about. In general, want to talk about a little bit about Wholesum, which we've started already. I want to take some time to talk about recipe ideas. So this is a piece that may be valuable to you regardless of whether you plan to use Wholesum or not. This is a collection of recipes that you can access even without a subscription. We want to do a quick introduction to the basics of meal planning. And so we'll run through that pretty quickly in 10 or 15 minutes and pause there for any questions. And then we'll get into some of the more interesting or fancy tools that we have to deal with the nuances that come with anybody who's really planning food for groups often. So those include dealing with dietary restrictions, a few tools and strategies that we can walk through there. And then for anybody who's familiar with Wholesum already, you'll know that there's a lot of little bells and whistles that you can turn on if you want to add a little bit more power to Wholesum to deal with, combining shopping lists across groups or pulling shopping lists just for a specific store. Or we rolled out some new AI features to help you draft recipes and instructions, ingredient rounding, that sort of thing. So we'll go through as much of that as we have time for, and then we'll jump into sort of the different pricing and plans and options and whatnot. As Grace mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and either Grace or I will try to address them as they come up. So without delay, let's jump into the recipes and the demo. So I have here a demo account of mine that's set up. But before I jump into sort of how Wholesum works, I did want to point you towards this recipe collections. You can access this from the dashboard. This is the dashboard that we're seeing on Wholesum. Or you can access it from kind of the footer down here. So even if you're not a subscribed user, this is something that you can access at any time. And it's just a great resource, particularly for those of you that are in like university outdoor programs or are in the outfitting space. What we have here is that we've got a number of active Wholesum users who have offered to share their recipes that they're currently using in their Wholesum system with other users. So you can take a look to jump into any of these and, see what maybe some peer organizations are doing for their recipes. And with any of these, you can jump in and kind of get a sense of what the recipe contains. And then if you do have a Wholesum account, it's one that you can pretty easily pull into to your account as well and save this recipe to be one that you can use in your system as well. So I usually want to start there mostly just so that if you take nothing else away from this demo, this is a great resource that you can come to at any point just to get a sense of what other folks in your industry are serving to their groups. So that will lead me into how to use Wholesum in general. So I wanted to start with the basics of Wholesum. And what I mean by that is basically creating recipes, creating instructions, or creating the ingredients, and managing your meal plans. And so this top row is where we'll spend most of our time. And as a high level, the process here is that you're going to start by creating your recipes, whether that's ones you create by scratch or borrow from elsewhere. As you do that, it'll make this long list of the ingredients. Those are all of the ingredients that you might use in any of your recipes. That'll be created automatically. And here you can spend as much or as little time as you want. It's a space to add detail about the brand that you use or the store you purchase it at, cost estimates for those ingredients, those sorts of things. And all of that will roll up into the fun part, which is the meal plans. So this is where you manage your groups. So in this case, we're going to say, we've got 3 groups coming next week, and there's 12 on one and 14 on another and 16 on another. And these are the dietary restrictions in those groups. And it'll pull together the shopping list and meal plan for you from here. So let's take a look at each of those quickly. So again, this is my demo account. When you start and sign up for a trial, there's a free 2-week trial. This is going to be blank, and you'll have the opportunity to build out the list of recipes that you want to serve for your groups. There are, generally speaking, 3 ways to do that. One is you can use that Browse Collections page that I just showed you, where we can pull recipes from other organizations into our system. Another is to create them manually, where we would have a blank slate and start building out our recipe. And then a third is a tool that we recently rolled out that leans on AI to help you draft sort of the first draft of a recipe that we can look at later. So I'm going to start by looking at an existing recipe that I created manually. So we'll look at bagels and cream cheese. This is often just a simple starting place for us. And we'll do a few things. We'll name the recipe. We will define a standard serving size for this. So this is servings per recipe. I'm going to say 10 in this case. And this is not something you need to dwell too much on because the recipe itself will be scaled up and scaled down later. So the goal here is to make sure that when you build the recipe, it's an appropriate amount of food for a serving of 10 individuals. And if it makes more sense for you to think in per person quantities, we can change this to 1 and make sure that we adjust these down to 1. And in the end, it's going to scale up or down with the group size. So if I had a group of 20, it would double this recipe. If I had a group of 15, it would increase it by 50%. So we're just trying to get sort of a standard amount here and deal with the scaling later. So I'll come through here and I'll add my ingredients to this recipe. You can see for bagels and cream cheese, I've just got the 2 bagels and cream cheese. But if you were building a more complicated recipe, we have the option to add the quantity. There's various units, weights, volumes, as well as these sort of like packaging or, indivisible kind of units here. And then we can add our ingredient. One thing you'll note is as I start typing the name of the ingredient, it's going to search every other recipe that we have in our system to see in your system for the recipes that you've added. It'll search all of those recipes to find ingredients that might be a potential match. And this is really designed to try to keep you consistent. So the goal is we want to make sure we don't end up with some recipes that have garlic cloves and some recipes that have cloves of garlic and others that have minced garlic. And it just doesn't pull together into a shopping list that can really make sense for you. So this is trying to steer you toward using consistent naming conventions and units. So I'll remove these 2 just to keep that as it is. Moving down, there's a few other details that we can save about this recipe. Pretty standard things. We can type recipe instructions, how to make bagels and cream cheese, if that's helpful, so that this can go out with your cooks, your instructors, your guides, your clients to make sure that they have appropriate instructions, as well as categorization of it and what potential dietary restrictions are in it. There's also an option to tag them with some custom tags if you have a way of thinking about your recipes in a way that doesn't really fit into these categories above. So there's one more thing I wanted to show you on the recipes, and then we'll move on. And that is this substitute column. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. We'll talk about dietary restrictions a little bit more. But while we're here making this recipe, I wanted to show you that we can add substitutes. So I'm going to click here and you'll see for bagels, I've said that if somebody has a wheat or gluten intolerance or allergy, we're going to substitute this recipe with gluten-free bagels. And what we'll see later on, I'll demo this in a minute or two, is that as we add individuals to a group that have a wheat or gluten intolerance, it's going to decrease the number of normal bagels and increase the number of gluten-free bagels because this rule is in place. And we could easily do the same for cream cheese, where we would specify if somebody had a dairy allergy, we would add a substitute rule here to replace it with something else. So we'll come back to that in a second, but that's an important part of this recipe piece. Okay, so we have taken our time to build out all of these recipes. We can, filter them and tag them. We can clone them. There's a lot we can do here that I won't spend time on. But needless to say, we've taken some time to build out the list of recipes that we want to use for our organization and for our groups. And the next step is that ingredients page. So let's spend a minute there. This one's really straightforward. What you'll see here is, as I mentioned, a list of every ingredient that we've added to every recipe. So this will be created and managed automatically. We will see a place that we can add some notes about that ingredient. We'll see which recipes it's found in. We can specify a store, and this is something that you'll populate yourself. So if you have multiple vendors and you buy different ingredients from different vendors or different stores, you can specify the store as well as the department where it's found. And the goal here is really that the final shopping list that we look at, we want to be able to see that either sorted by or broken down by the store and the department so that your shopping can go really quickly. And so, you don't need to spend time filling all of this out if it's not helpful for you. But the more information you add to this page, the more powerful your spreadsheet will be in the end. I mentioned the garlic example. We also have some tools that we just rolled out last month to help clean up duplicates if you do end up with them. So I won't do this now, but just as an example, if these were two duplicate ingredients, I can merge them, and it'll walk me through a process of making sure that I merge them in a way that updates the recipes appropriately. The only other thing I'll mention here is cost estimates. So we do have an option to kind of keep track of the costs of your meal plans and your recipes. And so what we can do here is come in and say, well, with bagels, we typically purchase them by the dozen, and it costs us $2. So this is not meant to be an accounting tool or anything like that. It's meant to basically give you a ballpark estimate for what a given recipe would cost per serving, or what a meal plan would cost in total if you take the time to add those cost estimates to each ingredient. Okay, great. So that's, I'm going to not save those changes. So that's recipes and ingredients. That's sort of your upfront work that you'll spend a little bit of time creating so that your group meal planning can go really fast and easily in the end. So what I wanted to show you next is this meal plan section. So this is the actual management of the groups. And so on the left, what I've got are some folders where I can keep my groups organized. On the right are my meal plans within those groups. And I can make new ones as well. So I'm going to start by making a new one. And I will say, webinar demo. So this is the name of the group. We can define the number of individuals in the group by appetite size. So in this case, I'll just say that there are 15 people in this group. You'll note if I added, 10 up here, that it's going to increase the total number of servings beyond just the number of people, so that we inflate it a little bit. But I'll just go with 15 normal appetite individuals. Excuse me. Next, we'll get to dietary restrictions. So this is where those rules that I showed you will come into play that I showed you in the recipe. So we can say, of those 15 people, we're going to say 4 of them have a wheat or gluten intolerance, and 3 of them don't do dairy. So this is where you can manage the dietary restrictions in the groups as it relates to those substitution rules that I mentioned. Next comes the recipes part. So this is where we build out our actual plan. So I will say, we can do this either by date or by day number, but I'm going to do it by date and say we're going to do a 3-day group. And on the left are my recipes. On the right, we have each day is a row, and each column is the kind of meal that we're serving. And so what we'll do here is just say, let's look at our breakfast options, and we'll do bagels and cream cheese here, bacon and eggs, French toast. We can add multiples here to do granola there. Let's look at a lunch option, and we'll throw some of these in there. Can clear these out. If we want to look at those custom tags that we did, we can filter it by that. I'll throw a few more on here just so we have a good, meaningful meal plan for the shopping list to demonstrate. Great. So let's imagine this is our meal plan now. A few things to highlight here. One is that this little icon here is going to flag for us just a notification to say, it looks like somebody in your group has a possible conflict with this meal. So if you've accommodated that with substitutes and whatnot, then you're good to go. But if you haven't, this is just a heads up to say, hey, this might not be a good option given the dietary restrictions that you have in your group. The last step I want to show you here is that this is the meal plan that we just built. And it's assuming that everybody in the group is eating everything. But if for some reason that's not true, we can scale it back and say 10 people are doing that and 5 people are doing that. Maybe we're serving 2 different options. Maybe somebody's joining the group late or somebody's leaving early. This is a tool to sort of scale those back. So we've built our recipes. We've added the ingredient details. We've built a sample meal plan here. I'm going to save this and you'll see sort of the final output. So this is the meal plan. There's a few ways to view it. We can see it on the screen here. There's an iPhone and Android app to view the meal plans as well. And there's also spreadsheets. I usually gravitate towards the PDF first. So let's take a look at that. And we'll see what this looks like. So there are a few components here. So this is our shopping list or packing list. It's going to be the total quantities needed for the entire group for all of the meals. It'll be sorted by store or by department, and you can change that if you need to. And you'll also get breakdown. So we can take a look at these eggs. We need 60 eggs for the whole group. 45 of those are going to be used for bacon and eggs, and 15 are going to be used for the steak and eggs that I added. So you can see a breakdown by meal as well. If you've added some notes about the ingredients, they'll show up here. That's a helpful way to add some instructions for the person doing the purchasing or packing. And you'll also see some US and metric and cost details if you've added cost details to it. You can also change what shows up here. So if you don't need to see all this information, you can customize which columns show up. So this is the first section. The next section is going to be your actual meal plan. So this is that grid that we use for planning. It'll show you what we're eating, as well as the number of people eating each one. And then the last section is the recipe details themselves. So this is bagels and cream cheese. You'll see that it's got those 4 substitute bagels, gluten-free bagels, because of the gluten-free rules that we set up. And this will be scaled up. You might remember that this was originally a recipe for 10 people. It's now serving 15, and it's been scaled up to meet that. If we've added instructions, and let's see if we did that on any of these, great. Those will come in here as well. So I clearly didn't add too many instructions to many of these, but if you add instructions to your recipes, they'll carry through here as well. So in a nutshell, that is Wholesum. This is sort of the bare bones of the tool in terms of scaling your recipes to the right size, generating accurate shopping lists, managing dietary restrictions in a fundamental way, and streamlining your purchasing process. So with that, I want to pause and see if there's any questions that you all want to ask in the chat. See if there's any clarifications that I can do, if there's anything you want me to back up and run through again. Otherwise, I'll move on to some of the next items that we wanted to cover today.
John, there is one question that was in the Q&A section.
Sure.
Can you reorder your shopping list to be organized by type of food or area of store?
Yes. So there is in the settings, and I'll spend more time on this settings section later today. In the settings, there is a space where you can define what we're sorting by. So it can sort by store, which is what I have it set up by. You can sort by department, by the name of the ingredient, or by that notes section. So I have seen some people use that notes section to indicate the aisle that it was in or something like that. And then you can sort by that as well. The other option there is, I didn't show this, but you can export any of these into Excel. And then obviously once it's in Excel, you can do a lot more with it if you're comfortable with Excel to sort or manipulate it however you want to. Great. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm happy to jump into the next section of the presentation.
One more. Richard just mentioned that his account doesn't have the substitute option. Is this a new feature, or does something need to change with someone's account to be able to? Can you show us how you find that section?
Yeah, sure. So there's two variables here. So one, and this we'll cover some of this at the end as well. One is what level account you have. So the substitute rules are just for the professional enterprise. So if you're on basic, that may not be one that's accessible to you. If you are already on professional or enterprise, you should be able to turn it on or off from this substitute ingredient section in settings. And then that should become available to you. So it could be either of those situations. And Lori, I see your question about when we have ingredients like salt and pepper or other herbs and seasonings, does it properly scale up or down for those items? So short answer is yes. If it's built into a given recipe where we have, this is maybe a poor example because it's bagels and cream cheese, but maybe we want to put, a tablespoon of dill on this bagels and cream cheese. We can use the right measure here and save that recipe, and that now will scale up and down to the number of tablespoons needed for the recipe. If it was 20, it would double it. If it's 15, it would be 1.5 tablespoons. So that's the short answer. If you've built in those herbs and spices into the recipes themselves. There are a lot of organizations that we work with tend to have like a cook kit or a set of staples that they use. And there's another tool that I can show that maybe I'll demo towards the end that allows you to scale those cook kits or those like spice kits in a way that doesn't necessarily have to increase every time. So for example, maybe you always bring one salt shaker and one pepper grinder, and it doesn't matter how many people are in the group. There is a way to manage those kinds of ingredients differently. And if there's time, I'll walk through that at the end.
Don, we have a few more questions coming in. From Jake, will it be possible to add custom allergens?
Yes. So I'll jump to settings again for that one. And there is this dietary restrictions page. And you can come here and either change or remove or add the dietary restrictions that you want to manage within your system. So that's the easiest way to do it there. When you start your trial, it's going to come with this list, which I think is the most common 10 or 12 that people encounter. But if you have other ones that you're encountering more often, this is the way to do it.
And kind of along those lines, Candace asked, are kosher or halal included as dietary restrictions, or is that editable?
So that's a little bit of a tricky one. One thing that they're not included here, but you can add what you need to here. One common place that people get tripped up is they'll add a component like vegan to this, and I think that like halal would be an example of that, where it's this category of restrictions. And I just would caution people there, because the way that this is currently set up is that we're basically thinking of these as exclusions. So we're saying they don't eat pork, they don't eat dairy. And so when I come to that meal plan, just as an example, we'll come here. If there was one, let's imagine there's no dietary restrictions on this group, but one person is vegan, he or she would show up in multiple categories here as one person. So the way to think about this is like, how many people in your group don't eat eggs? How many people in your group don't eat beef? So it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about it. Some people approach this as like, how many vegans do I have? And this is really a different way of counting it so that it can work with those rules more effectively. Also, because there's often gray areas, right? Like with somebody, they're vegetarian, but they'll eat eggs, or they're vegan, but they eat fish, or whatever it is. And this allows us some flexibility to really define it more specifically.
And when it comes to this level of specificity, when you're putting your meal plan together, if you have questions about, there's a number of routes to kind of manage substitutions and or dietary restrictions. It's something we're happy to help you think through, because we've done that with others. So there's some routes we're familiar with, and we can point you on that path if that's, as you dig in, something that kind of comes up and you're curious about.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of next on the list to talk about is a few other little tools. Dietary restrictions is one of the hardest things, I think, for people planning food for groups. And so we've tried to give you a few paths to deal with it. And I wanted to make sure I've demoed some of those already, and I wanted to spend a little bit more time on it. Before I go, I saw Jamie, you had a question about the 60 eggs, including the cup of eggs. it's possible this is just a funny nuance of, yeah, okay. So this is an example. This is my demo account where I'm often using it. Thanks for flagging that. So this is a bad example, but basically this is my demo account where I'm often testing it to make sure that there aren't duplicates and whatnot. And so in this case, this was me just testing it and breaking it to make sure that it's working the way it should. So when you build out yours, it shouldn't have this at all. But thanks for flagging that. If anytime there's like the same ingredient with the same name, it will combine into one. We just happen to see my demo account in this case. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm happy to jump into the next section.
There is one more question in the Q&A section. And I know you'll probably be touching on this later, but I'll kind of let you decide if you want to address this now or then. Is there a functionality regarding planning for when to buy items for longer trips that will need mid-trip shopping trips or ingredients to ensure that they don't go bad?
Yeah. Good question. Okay. So let's think through this a little bit together. There's a few different tools that we can use in this situation. So the situation is that there's a few situations that we could have here. One is that we've got two groups coming up and we want to shop for those. One is that we've got one group, but we have a stop in between where we want to shop partway for certain ingredients partway through the trip. And there's two tools that work kind of in tandem together. And we are jumping ahead, Grace, but I think that's totally fine. If we've got the question now, I'll dig into it. So there is a tool that I want to turn on called export customization. If any of this is too much, you can kind of, ignore me for the moment, but we've designed Wholesum in a way that you can have all of these settings off and it's really simple to run through. And then as you need it, you can turn on this additional setting. And hopefully that comes with a little bit more complexity, but it'll also come with more customization and power for you. So in this case, I've got this one on. And what this will do for me is it allows me to do two things. One is I can combine shopping lists. So if I'm shopping for multiple groups at a time, I can check off those ones that I need to purchase and pull one combined list in Excel or PDF for all of those. I can also multiply these. So maybe it's a template, style one that is just sort of a boilerplate meal plan. And I need to get 10 times. I know I've got 10 of those coming up, but I don't have the specificity of the specific, allergies or whatnot defined yet. So we can multiply those out. So that's one tool to combine them. So in answer to your question, one option is to break this into two meal plans and then combine them when you need the full list and break them apart when you need separate lists. The other option here is when we're looking at a specific meal plan. Let's say we have that 3-day trip, but we want to go shopping on the third day. We can specify the dates and just pull a meal plan for certain dates on that trip and pull for other dates on that trip. The last piece is, and I'm throwing a lot at you, is that the Excel spreadsheet will be tabbed out by day. So let me actually let's see if I can pull this up for you.
And maybe while you're pulling up that spreadsheet, I could just say, you kind of touched on this. This can be a lot of information at once. And that's because both in what you're showing now, how we're trying to lay out what we're discussing with you today, and how we have the settings kind of set at the most simple option at first, and then you can turn more complex and powerful tools on as needed. It's just that over the last 6-7 years, while we've developed this and the controls, the level of complexity alongside our customers based on needs, it means it can be a lot of information at once. So we try to keep it streamlined and simple as you kind of first come in. And then depending on your needs, as you kind of dive in further, we've got a number of resources in addition to always being available to touch base personally to help you understand how you can delve into that further complexity if it's necessary for your operation.
Yeah, thanks, Grace. And this is one of those, we're getting down into the weeds on some of these things, as you mentioned, Grace, but this is another example. This is the spreadsheet when you export it, and you'll see the shopping list very much like we had on that PDF. We also have it tabbed out by day. So if you need to break down shopping in a different way, we can see which ingredients we're going to need for each day. So it's another tool that you may or may not need. Plenty of folks don't need to think about it day by day, but if you do, that's there for you to pull out as well.
We did have one more remaining question before we continue forward. James from REI was wondering, is there a function to round up a meal plan ingredients to a whole number, like 3 loaves of bread instead of 2.88?
Yeah, great. So yes is the answer. We come to settings again, there is this ingredient rounding piece. So again, this is off for most users when they come in, but if it's something that you need, like James mentioned, you can turn this on. And what this will allow us to do is on the ingredients page, it will open us up to see this rounding column. And for those ingredients that can be rounded easily, like bread, we can set it to round up, round down, or round to the nearest whole. And that will make the shopping list a little bit more clean and accurate. Some organizations saying like 2.8 loaves of bread is no problem. They can work with that. They either leave a little bread behind, they know what to buy, they buy 3. But especially if you're client facing, or if you've got instructors or guides that might get confused by those decimal points, you can set up some rounding rules right there.
And one more question before you keep
no
moving forward. These are great, you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate this. We're covering a lot of what we hope to cover today in the question, so this is great.
As an outfitter that operates 6 months out of the year, can Wholesum be used seasonally and not lose all of your entries in between seasons?
Yes. So I'll jump ahead to the pricing piece, which we can talk more about at the end. There's different levels that you can sign up for, but you can also toggle between monthly and annual. And if you sign up for monthly, at any point you want to, you can pause your account, just manage my subscription, and you can pause or renew your account here. And when you do that, you'll lose access to it temporarily, but when you start it up again the next season or the next spring or whatever, it'll all still be there. All of your recipes and meal plans will still be there for you to access.
There is some savings when you purchase annually, but we also understand that seasonality. Some clients have found that it is helpful to access it during the off season if there is a lot of planning or refining you want to do. And maybe that's during the full off season for some. Maybe it's just a month or 2 before the height of your season starts. So you can be doing kind of that maintenance and cleanup based on what you learned with your meals the previous year. So there's a number of ways people manage that kind of based on their needs.
Yeah, great. Any other questions? Others, I'm happy to jump forward. Okay. So we talked about a lot of this already, but I did want to spend a little bit more time on dietary restrictions because there are different ways that organizations manage these, and because this is such a challenging part of what we do. So we already talked about this to some degree. But basically, to me, I usually think about this as 3 different ways that we can accommodate dietary restriction. One is the common denominator version of this. So this is often what we would use when there's a really severe anaphylactic allergy on the trip, like a peanut allergy, where we don't even want to go there. We don't want to bring peanuts on the trip at all. And that's one strategy we can do. So I can demo how we would deal with that. One is meal substitution. So the example here would be like, we're serving pasta for dinner, but we have 3 gluten-free people on the trip. And so for those 3 people, we're going to serve rice and beans or something completely different. It's just serving two completely different meals for the people that have dietary restrictions. So this is another tool that we can use, and I'll demo that. And then the third I've already shown you. This is the ingredient substitution, where we're saying everyone's having bagels and cream cheese, or everyone's having like bagels for breakfast, but we're going to substitute the normal bagels for gluten-free bagels. We're going to substitute the cream cheese for, hummus or whatever it is that you want to substitute there. So that's the third strategy that I think I've already shown you. So let's talk quickly about common denominator and meal substitution. The best way to deal with the common denominator one, which is where we're just going to say, all right, no tree nuts on this trip at all, is when we're making this meal plan. These flags are really helpful, but we can actually just say, we're just going to filter out tree nuts completely and just don't even show me any recipes that are flagged with tree nuts. And now this recipe should be safe. These recipes should be safe to be added because we haven't flagged them as ones with tree nuts. So that's the common denominator approach. It's pretty simple and straightforward. The other method, this meal substitution one, is also one that I've sort of shown you already, but I'll be more explicit about it. And that would be in this case where we're serving spaghetti and meatballs for dinner here. We might say, for those people, we've got 3 people on the trip that are both gluten-free and vegetarian, and it's just going to be easier to serve them rice and beans rather than trying to do, a gluten-free pasta and also a vegetarian sauce, and it just gets too messy. So we're just going to serve them something completely different. So what I would do there is come down to this bottom piece, and I'm going to say, 10 people are having the spaghetti meatballs and 5 people are having the rice and beans. And then we would save the meal plan there, and it would scale down the spaghetti meatballs, and it would add the rice and beans to the meal plan there. So those are kind of the three main strategies. And then the substitution I've shown you is setting up those rules in the recipe and having them substitute automatically. So maybe I'll pause there to see if there are any other questions related to dietary restrictions. And I think I showed on that list a place where we can customize the dietary restriction list as well. Okay, great. So coming back to the general plan, I did want to take some time to show some of the more advanced features. Some of these we've touched on through the process of the questions. We talked about ingredient rounding already. I demoed the exporting multiple meal plans and export customization. So those can be really helpful as well. A few other things I wanted to show you really quickly that we have. So in these settings, there's a lot that can happen. And I'll jump back to that in just a second. We rolled out a pretty neat tool a few weeks ago that's still sort of in beta, but you're welcome to log in and play with it. And that is the third way to generate recipes. And that's using ChatGPT, basically the AI tool to write recipes for you. This takes a few minutes, so I'm going to get it started and we can come back to it. And we'll just say creamy spinach lasagna. So you can really write any recipe here. And what it's going to do is draft a recipe for you. It's one that you're going to want to review for accuracy and make sure that it's an accurate one for you. But it's also going to reference all of the ingredients that you use in other recipes to make sure that we're not creating duplicates, that we're being consistent across the naming of our ingredients, and we're not being repetitive to make that shopping list too messy. So this usually takes a minute or two to load. So that's one thing I wanted to demo for you. It'll also help you with drafting instructions for recipes if you ever need that as a neat tool. And the other tools I wanted to show you here, it's worth taking some time to look through each of these, but I won't bore you with the details of it now. The other 2 pieces that can be really helpful for organizations are these batch recipes and packing notes. We see these being used quite often with outfitters who have like really specific packing needs. So if I turn both of these on, I want to show you them really quickly, serving slightly different functions. So for packing notes, so it's pretty straightforward. Basically, on each recipe, it's going to give us a chance to say, here's where we pack this. Let's put the cream cheese in the dairy cooler. Let's put the bagels in the dry box. and we can specify the location for each of these. And what that allows us to do then is on that final meal plan, we can pull lists for each, basically inventory lists for each of those locations. So I can say, I'm going to pull a PDF or a spreadsheet, but I just want the list of the dry box ingredients. And it'll pull an inventory list so that packing becomes a lot easier that way. So that's the packing notes tool that can be really helpful. Let's see if this guy's done. Great. Creamy spinach lasagna. So we've got our draft recipe created automatically. Here, you'll see that these ones that don't say new are ones that it's borrowing from existing recipes. So we're not getting a messy shopping list, and then it's creating some new ones here that we don't have. You can make changes to these, adjust them, review it, make sure it looks like a good recipe. You've also got instructions here that you can edit or adjust. So that's the new fancy AI tool if you need to draft some new recipes. And I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but I want to make sure I leave some time for questions. So we just talked about packing notes. The last one I think that is worth sharing is this batch recipes. This one takes a little bit to wrap your head around, but I often think of this as an example of like a loaf of bread or a cake. So with a loaf of bread, if you have a recipe for how to make a loaf of bread and the group gets bigger and bigger and bigger and you keep adding more people, you're not going to make an infinitely larger and larger and larger loaf of bread. You're going to make one loaf of bread, and at some point you might make 2 loaves of bread, and at some point you might make 3 loaves of bread. It doesn't scale in the same way that as a normal recipe would. So that's true often for cakes, for Dutch oven recipes. If you're a rafting outfitter or you use Dutch oven recipes a lot, they scale a little bit differently. They scale by doubling. And so when I turn this on, what I get is an option on each recipe. Immediately, it's not going to do anything. But then what I'll do is have the option on, let's say, Dutch oven lasagna to turn this on to scale by batch. And so now we think of it as a batch recipe, and it's going to lock to these quantities for anything under 6. And then once we get above 6, it's going to double, and it's going to bring 2 of these recipes. So that can be really helpful if you have those recipes that just don't scale in the same way, and you want to think of them as recipes that double rather than going up incrementally. We also see this tool used a lot for that staples conversation there was a question earlier about dealing with spices and herbs. We do see a lot of organizations use this batch recipe tool for their staples recipe. So there might be a staples recipe that has a salt shaker and olive oil and pepper and whatever other 5 or 10 things. And then they just set a really large number and set it to scale by batch. And now this is going to just be locked in basically for any group size, and it's never going to change. It'll just be sort of set to this quantity. So we've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure I have time for questions. Before we go there, I had 2 or 3 things left to share. One is that I know I threw a lot at you today. There's a lot of different features and bells and whistles, many of which you may not need or use, in which case you don't need to worry about them. If ever you want a refresher, we'll have a recording of this. We've taken the time to document as much as we possibly could here in the help and support. So for example, if you don't quite remember how, batch recipes works, there's an article here, there's a video that we've made, and it'll kind of walk you through some ways to use that. And for almost everything that I've talked about today, from the merging duplicate ingredients to creating recipes, there's an article and a video to walk you through each one of those. So hopefully that helps. And finally, I just wanted to throw this up there that this is my contact information. If you want to reach out, my email address as well as a phone number, you're welcome to reach out, and we can set up a one-on-one time with you and your organization if it would be helpful to work through your nuances of it. And then finally, to just spread the word. We're a small organization. Grace and I have been running the show here for the last 7 years, and it's been really fun to build this alongside everybody, alongside the community of users and the requests that come. And we just are always looking to to try to help other organizations plan their food for groups. So if you think of an organization that could really use this, please do spread the word for us. We really appreciate it. And with that, I'll leave a few minutes for more questions and see what I can do to help. Grace, any questions that you saw come up?
Not yet. Jen said thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all. While the questions trickle in, there is a 2-week free trial. You don't need to put your credit card or anything down. It'll just give you 2 weeks of free access. And then should you decide to continue, you can just upgrade and keep that account or start a new one. I didn't spend too much time on the pricing here, but we talked through a lot of these features that are in settings. So you can this can help you decide where you might land on the spectrum.
John, will we be at America Outdoors in Phoenix in early December?
We will be. Yeah. We have a booth at AO, so please do stop by if you'll be there. Thanks, Billy.
We love connecting with new and current customers in person. As a very small organization, it's not always possible for us to go to every conference, but it's such a joy to connect. So that'll be great. Ooh, good question. Candace asks, as your company grows, what are your next areas you want to develop?
Yeah.
I'll let you jump into that in a second, John, but I would just say we really have developed organically based on what customers have needed and asked for. That said, being small, we if it's like one thing that only one customer and one customer only has ever asked for, it's not something we can immediately implement, but we're constantly kind of tracking needs. And as it grows, as the number of people saying, hey, this sort of thing might help me, and it's not just a single organization, we definitely track that and really do our best to add functionality as we're able to. And we have a really great web development team that we work with who has allowed us to get a lot done in a short amount of time. So I'll let you get into the details, but I would say we just launched a number of new updates that we're really excited for people to dig into right now. But also, John, feel free to reflect on looking into the future.
Yeah.
But even just walking through all of this, there's been the addition of so many powerful options over the last 6 or 7 years too.
Yeah. It's been fun the last few months rolling out the auto generation of recipes, auto generation of instructions, merging ingredients. Some of those were exciting new additions just in the last month or two. I'd say the 3 most common questions that we get are the ones that are sort of always on our minds. And while there's not any immediate plans to deal with them, they're the ones that come up often enough that we're always chewing on it. One is inventory management. There's not currently a tool to manage inventory. There are a few little hacks that I can show you that some organizations use, but it's not meant to be an inventory management tool currently. It's more about generating the shopping lists. So that's one on our mind. Another question we often get is either integration with, or at least like a URL connection to those organizations that purchase through vendors that are online, to connect the dots from ingredient to, say, an online store with a vendor or something like that. We get that question a lot, and don't have an immediate solution for that. So that's been on my mind. And I had a third one that I'm blanking on. That's okay.
Maybe while you think about that.
Yeah.
Jake has a question. If we have a solid recipe, rock solid, that we want to share with the world so that other Wholesum users can use it, is there a method to doing that?
Yeah, I would love that. The more the merrier. So in your settings, there is this recipe sharing tab. It's going to be off for you by default. but you can turn it on if you'd like. And then for each recipe, there's this, when you have that on, there's this little eye bubble. And these will also, you can turn off or on the recipes that you'd like to share. So if you want to turn that on and then hide the ones that you don't want to share, you can do it that way. And then your recipes will show up in those recipe collections. If you want a little bit of, credit for it, there's also a place to manage the public information to show, like, here's our logo, here's our company name, here's how I want it to be displayed in that recipe collection area, so that the world can see those recipes.
Yeah. And we find that some people come to this they've got their recipes dialed in, they get them in there, they're happy with them. These are things that they want to stick with. And other folks, they have a handful that they like, but they're really curious about what other people have developed. And this allows you to do those things and more to pull together what you end up using, which is really exciting. There's a lot of methods to pull your recipes together. Candace is also wondering if the 2-week trial is for the more restricted version of this subscription.
No, the 2-week trial will actually be the enterprise level. So you'll have access to everything in the 2-week trial. And then you can decide basically which features are helpful to you and pick which level you'd like to continue at. Great. I know we've got another minute or two. If there's another question, I'm happy to tackle it, but I really appreciate everybody coming today. I appreciate all of the great questions. This was awesome to just organically cover so many of these topics through the questions that you all had. And as Grace and I mentioned, feel free to reach out at any time if you have a specific question or if you want to set up a time for us to chat with somebody on your team. Thank you so much. Any other last minute questions? Otherwise, we'll send out the recording and follow up from there. Great. Thank you all. Take care.